Before we start, let me give you a quick overview of the Crime Syndicate. They are the evil, ruthless counterparts to the Justice League. In this story arc, their members are Atomica, Deathstorm, Grid, Johnny Quick, The Outsider, Owlman, Power Ring, Superwoman, and Ultraman. We begin with Lex Luthor in his Lex Sword G private helicopter, doing whatever it takes to buy Thomas's Cord Industries, with Thomas refusing to sell. Then suddenly, Metropolis loses power, and Lex's helicopter crashes. Lex survives, and his phone flashes the following message: "This world is ours." Next, we see Crime Syndicate's Grid, a sentient cybernetic entity, state Gotham is next to go offline. Then we see Nightwing, holding a bound Mr. Jas, conversating with Batgirl when suddenly the message, "This world is ours," is blasted into his earpiece. That's followed by someone flying past him to the Arkham Asylum's gates and then ripping them open. As Nightwing moves to investigate, he gets knocked out and taken as a prisoner by Owlman of the Crime Syndicate. Next, we see Thomas pleading with Lex to help rescue him from the wreckage, only to have Lex tell him to stop whining. Thomas is barely hanging on the back end of the helicopter. Then, a figure that appears to be Superman soars past Lex at an incredible speed, and with such force that it causes Thomas to lose his grip and fall to his death. The figure that appears to be Superman rips open the door to a building in search of Kryptonite. Over the next few panels, we see Crime Syndicate members Deathstorm, Johnny Quick, and Power Ring break into prisons to free villains such as Black Manta. We then see Luthor observing who he believes is Superman crushing and snorting Kryptonite for a power surge. As the stranglehold of the Crime Syndicate Titan, they orchestrate the simultaneous liberation of inmates from major prisons across the globe, beckoning a legion of villains to the inaugural assembly of their secret society held in the infamous Happy Harbor. This was the very site where the Justice League Watchtower had met its fiery end at the hands of Despero. Ultraman's declaration of the Justice League's demise reverberated ominously, demanding unwavering allegiance to the malevolent Crime Syndicate. Next, we see the Crime Syndicate sharing with the villains the Justice League members' iconic memorabilia: Aquaman's trident, a shredded Superman's cape, and Wonder Woman's lasso. Followed by the Crime Syndicate declaring the Justice League is dead, with Johnny following up saying, "Hell yes, they are." Then we see Grid providing the Crime Syndicate a live broadcast to the world to introduce the Crime Syndicate members, Owlman, Superwoman, Power Ring, Deathstorm, Johnny Quick, and Atomica. He reveals their origins as rulers of Earth 3 until their own world revolted against them, which drove them to obliterate it, then setting forth on a quest to conquer other worlds. Doubts from a skeptical Monocle met a swift and merciless execution. We see Superwoman hold up Nightwing as an example to those that oppose the Syndicate. This leads to the public unveiling of his secret identity, orchestrated as a grim exhibition. We then see Ultraman declaring they will find all of Nightwing's family and friends and kill them. He says this also applies to anyone that opposes them, and ends his speech saying, "Eternus malum," meaning forever evil. As the sun comes up, Ultraman's vulnerability to sunlight gets exposed. This compels him to employ the moon as an eclipsing shroud, casting the world into darkness, leaving Lex wondering, where the hell is Superman? Electricity waned, save for screens proclaiming the chilling message, "This world is ours," under Grid's pervasive dominion. The Teen Titans make a decision to go to the Justice League Watchtower to get Nightwing, knowing it's a matter of time before the Crime Syndicate figures out their relationship to him. We see that for some reason, Owlman and Ultraman had a deal over a hostage they've secretly held. If they kill Nightwing, then this other hostage has to be killed too, says Owlman. Ultraman states the reason he wants to keep their other hostage alive was to help fight that thing that came to the Syndicate's Earth, Earth 3. Grid states he's spotted some villains that have gone rogue. Ultraman says to send Deathstorm and Power Ring to take care of it while he heads to Kondak. In a hallway, there's a discussion taking place between Superwoman and Owlman, with Superwoman believing it's just a matter of time, before Ultraman knows she's pregnant and the baby isn't his. "It's Owlman's child," she says. Atomica and Johnny Quick lock horns with the Teen Titans. But Quick and Atomica make speedy work of them, casting the Titans into the unforgiving torrents of time. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor devised a plan to counter the Crime Syndicate by mobilizing his experimental war suit and resurrecting the unfinished Superman clone, Subject B0. We see Batman and Catwoman delivering what's remaining of Cyborg's body to his father, Dr. Stone. We get a little backstory from Batman on how some members of the Justice League became imprisoned inside the Firestorm Matrix. Then there's a transition to Lex training subject B-Zero. Next, there's Ultraman in a mid-air battle with Black Adam. Ultraman gets the best of Black Adam by crushing his jaw so that he can't say Shazam. Then, Ultraman disposes of his body into the waters below. Next, we see Deathstorm and Power Ring engage the villains that went rogue. The villains escape, but not before Deathstorm depowers Captain Cold. While Lex is training Subject B-Zero, we see Black Manta appear with Black Adam's body. Captain Cold also appears and they form an alliance. Batman reveals to Catwoman his clandestine armory, stocked with weapons prepared to confront the Justice League turned malevolent, such as a yellow lantern ring, a futuristic lightning rod, a mother box, and a kryptonite ring. We transition to Ultraman desperately in search of more kryptonite and finding it in Metallo. He rips it out of Metallo's chest. Superwoman arrives and Ultraman questions her about when she was going to tell him she was pregnant. Superwoman raises the possibility that Owlman and Nightwing are working together. She claims they're planning against her and Ultraman by building his own team. She then whispers in his ear that he needs to stay strong for their child. Ultraman coldly says he stays strong for himself and no one else. Next, we see Ultraman summoning Deathstorm back to the lab to work on Firestorm in an effort to produce kryptonite. Ultraman wants Power Ring to track down the Captain Cold and the other rogues. Power Rings is terrified of that proposition, and his ring's power levels are dropping. In a smaller panel, you can see Grid is monitoring Batman and Catwoman. Lex and his team break into Wayne Enterprises. But Power Ring, Blockbuster, Copperhead, Deathstroke, and Gigantus show up on the scene as well. Batman puts on the yellow ring in a showdown with Power Ring. But Power Ring's experience with his ring shows as he easily takes the yellow ring from Batman. Then, in a sudden turn of events, Sinestro shows up. Power Rings runs away terrified. Later, though, he finds the nuts to fight Sinestro even with a low-charged ring. We see Black Adam blast Giganta out of the building. Then, Sinestro gets the upper hand on Power Ring and severs his arm, and his ring leaves in search of a new host. Meanwhile, Lex is held at gunpoint by Deathstroke, but convinces him to switch teams, and Deathstroke ends up shooting Copperhead, who had viciously attacked Batman. We see Sinestro finish off Power Ring by blasting him to pieces. Batman, Lex, and Sinestro reconcile their differences to team up and identify who their leader will be. And of course, it's Batman. Next, we see the Crime Syndicate looking at what appears to be a red crack in the sky. They're believing it to be the creature that destroyed that wood and has now found them. Alfred, from Earth 3, secretly notifies Owlman and requests his return to the Watchtower. Superwoman overhears their conversation, though. Batman, Lex, and their team make it to the Watchtower where they find Nightwing locked up in the murder machine. The Grid notifies Alfred that someone has infiltrated the Watchtower, and Alfred updates Owlman. Owlman wants Alfred to secure Nightwing, but Alfred has other plans as he checks on the Syndicate's other prisoner. But Manta attacks and kills Alfred. Batman and Lex learn that Nightwing has a bomb attached to him, and that Firestorm is directly below. They're also alerted of an imminent threat to them. The Crime Syndicate blast onto the scene to attack Batman, Lex, Sinestro, and their team. A brawl breaks out with Sinestro and Ultraman in a fierce battle, but Black Adam flies Ultraman away as he says that's who he wants. Later, we learn that the room housing Nightwing was designed to hold Doomsday, and they don't have a way of breaking out of that room. They also learn the bomb detonator is monitoring Nightwing's heart and will only disarm if his heart stops. Next, we see Manta and Captain Cold unmask the other hostage, followed by a fight with Atomica. We then see Luthor blast Batman in the back and say the only way they're getting out of that room is by ending Nightwing's life. Captain Cold freezes Quick's leg and then crushes it in their fight. Batman puts on Power's ring and attacks Subject B-Zero after he attempted to blast Catwoman. Batman is triggered because of Lex mentioning he'll need Nightwing to die for them to get out of their dire situation. With the covering over his face and mouth removed, the other hostage screams Mazas. A powerful bolt of lightning hits him, and Ultraman understands their terrifying prisoner is now free. Batman attacks and pummels Lex, thinking Nightwing is dead. Meanwhile, the Syndicate's hostage drains Quick's powers and breaks his neck. We find out the hostage released is Alexander Luthor, and he declares he will be the most powerful hero the world has ever seen. We find out that Lex gave Nightwing a drug that momentarily stopped his heartbeat, which ultimately disarmed the bomb. We see Grid blast his way into the room only to find out he got smoked by a rebuilt cyborg. Ultraman and Deathstorm are discussing how to stop Alexander now that he's called down the lightning of the Mazas and is once again channeling the power of the Syndicate members he killed. They believe Superwoman's lasso of submission is the key, but don't know where she's at. Superwoman shows up to Ultraman and Deathstorm with Alexander by her side, declaring Alexander is the father of her unborn child. Batman and Catwoman locate Firestorm with the help of Cyborg. Ultraman and Alexander battle it out, with Alexander knocking out Ultraman. Then Alexander crushes Deathstorm's head and absorbs his powers, all of which causes an extremely powerful explosion. We then see Alexander attack and pummel Lex's team. Alexander and Subject B-Zero fight it out with Alexander, ultimately punching a hole in B-Zero's chest and absorbing his powers. Lex gives Sinestro a wand that can be used against Alexander. Sinestro battles Alexander and stabs him with it, followed by Black Adam shouting, "Shazam!" But the lightning has no impact on Alexander. Alexander now begins to pummel Lex, but Lex outsmarts Alexander by grabbing the wand stuck in Alexander's chest and shouts, "Mazas!" The lightning strips Alexander of his powers and Lex stabs him to death. Ultraman then starts attacking Lex. But Sinestro and Black Adam move the moon, allowing the sun to shine again. And this strips Ultraman of his powers, which leaves him weak, feeble, and sobbing continuously. Lex then crushes Atomica with his foot. We find out the remaining superheroes have been freed from the Firestorm Matrix. And Lex helped retrieve the kryptonite insidiously planted in Superman, leading to his full recovery. Much later, we see Lex revealing Batman's identity, and we see Superman and Aquaman discussing what could have destroyed Earth 3. They come to the conclusion that it could only be Anti-Monitor. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks again.